Wingspan families, welcome to Lego class. This week we're going to build spinning tops out of Lego. We're going to look at different designs for spinning tops, and you can make something a battle top like you have in Beyblade, or a spinner like you get in Ninjago, or whatever type of spinner you want to make. The video is divided into 4 sections. And in the first section I'll show you how to make exactly my favourite Lego spinning top. And then in the next 3 sections, we'll focus on different ways to make the very bottom of the spinner, the bit that touches the table, and then the platform, the bit that spreads out, and then what you put on top of the platforms. Those are the 3 distinct sections that every spinner has. So, like I say, we'll start with building this one, and then we'll go on to how to design other bits. To make my favourite spinner, these are the pieces you would need. You would need 2 2x6 plates, 4 2x2 plates, 4 2x2 slopey pieces, 2 2x2 round bricks with an axle hole in the middle, 1 of these 2x2 boat stud pieces, which have 4 studs on top and are curved underneath. 1 of these hollow long pieces that an axle goes into, and a very short axle piece. Now, if you don't have a lot of these pieces, don't worry. This is just an example of my favorite spinner. Watch me build this, and then later in this video I will show you how to use different pieces to build every important part of a spinner. So, the bottom of the spinner, the bit that actually touches the ground, is the most important piece. And the best Lego piece you can have for it is this. It's called a boat stud because typically it comes on the bottom of Lego boats to stop them from sticking onto stud-like surfaces. A boat stud slides along a stud surface. Now, we're going to take our boat stud and we're going to stick it onto the bottom of the 2x2 round brick. Then we're going to take our 2 2x6 pieces and we're going to make a crisscross shape with them and stick this round piece in the center underneath. Now the other round piece you have goes on top, so now you have a shape like this. Now this shape already spins. But we're going to make it spin better. Make it so that you can spin it better, it's easier for you to twist it, and make it so that it balances better and spins for longer. So, to make it easier to twist it, we're going to add a handle. This is where you're going to take the axle piece and stick it in to the top of that brick with the crisscross hole. And then we're going to take this wider piece that sticks onto the axle and slide it on top. Now we have a really good handle for our spinner. Next, we're going to make the sides more even. Right now, because you put one plate on top of the other to make that crisscross shape, one side is higher than the other side. So what we're going to do is, where your plate is underneath, we're going to stick a square plate on top and another square plate on top. Now, this makes all the studs that are on top even on this spinner. So you might think we're finished. It now is even on every side. But now it is unbalanced. A really important thing to make a spinner spin well is to make sure that every side in all directions are exactly the same. Now these 2 sides, the yellow and blue ones, they have the original flat piece sticking out, and then they have the square flat piece as well. Whereas the black sides only have the original piece you put, they do not have the flat squares. So we're going to take 2 more flat squares and stick them underneath. And now it's completely even all the way around, which makes it more balanced, which makes it spin better. See, the final touch to my favorite spinner is to take these slopey pieces and stick them around the sides. Now, again, you have to make sure that what you do matches on every single side. If I put a slopey piece here, I must put a slopey piece here, here, and here. I like the way the spinner looks with these slopey pieces, and they add extra weight to the edges, which is good for making it spin for longer. And if you're using it as a battle top, it's good because the heavier your spinner is, the better it will be at knocking other spinners out of the board. This is my favorite spinner completed. Now that you've seen how I built my favorite spinner, we're going to talk about how to adapt the spinner. Maybe you don't have some of these parts, or maybe you want to make more than one spinner and you don't have enough of these parts to make other spinners. Like I said at the beginning, the most important part of the spinner is at the bit at the bottom, the bit that actually touches the table and is for spinning. Now, if you do not have this piece with a rounded surface, you want to make as small a part of your thing. Like basically you want just one Lego stud's worth touching the ground. And the easiest way to do that while keeping everything studs up, if you don't have the piece that we were using, is to use a half pin. Do you see this is a blue half Technic pin? And it has basically a stud at one end, and then the other end is also as narrow as a stud. And you can take it, and when you turn your spinner upside down, you can find the round hole that is in the middle of the spinner, and you can stick the stud end of the blue pin into that hole. And now, let's have a look. See, it spins really well. It's not quite as solid as when you use this as the base, but it works. So that is my favorite alternative way to have a tip to your spinner. Now, if you don't have a piece like that, then the best thing to do is to start thinking about building your spinner upside down. This is a crisscross piece, like I made for my favorite spinner. It uses two 2x6s and you put them crisscross. Now, imagine instead of building with the studs the right way up, you turn them upside down. A very important thing about your spinner tip is it has to be in the absolute center of the thing that you're building. Now, you see, when we look at the bottom here, the rail underneath, there is a round hole right in the middle, and that's what we stuck our blue half pin into. Now, if we're working on the other side, you have 4 studs. And if you have a plate like this, which has 1 stud in the middle, it's a 2x2 jumper, you can stick it onto those 4 studs, and now that single stud is in the very middle of your whole spinner. And once you've done that, you can take a stud and put it underneath. Or you could take a 2x2 dish and put it underneath. It makes a nice look to the bottom, and it spins well as well. Or anything else. You could make a taller point to your bottom. You could use a cone piece. Anything that tops with just a single stud will work. Now, if you do not have this piece here, you can still go ahead with this. If you take a single stud, this is a bit fiddly, but actually it will stick down in between the 4 studs. These are really all the best ways I know to make a pointy bit in the center of your spinner that it is going to spin on. And remember that 2 of these 2, give you studs up on top of your spinner to build up on, whereas these 2 mean that if you're building up on the top of your spinner, you'll be building upside down, which is okay. It makes for an interesting change. Now let's look at the middle of the spinner, this bit here that we made with the 2 cross pieces. It doesn't have to be 2 2x6 cross pieces. You see, this one here is made with 2 2x8 cross pieces, and it works too. This one here is an upside down one with a cone for a point at the bottom, and it is made with a 6x6 square. What's important is that you have your point on the bottom, and then on the top you have a big flat area that sticks out in 4 directions, and that it is equal in all those directions. So, you know, you could use a big plate like this. You could experiment to see how long cross pieces you could use and still get your spinner to spin. If you look at this spinner, I have built up a shape. You see, I started with a 2x8 and a 2x6 and a 2x6 on either side of it. And then I put a 2x8 crisscross to that 2x8 and 2 more 2x6s, and then I filled in the very ends of the shape just with 1x2 plates. So that gives me a nice kind of a round shape for my spinner. You might even have a round plate that you could use. Once you have this, once you have your point on the bottom and you have whatever type of platform or spread out crisscross shape that is completely equal the whole way around with the same pieces used, can be different colors, but the same pieces used to make the shape completely symmetrical in 4 directions, then we're looking at what you put on top of the spinner. If you remember, with my favorite spinner, what I put on top was I used a brick with a crisscross hole in the very center. And I like to do that because then you can put an axle into it, and that sticks very well, and it's good for spinning. But you could put anything you want in the center as long as it comes right to the very middle. So, like if you look here, I've used a 1-stud round brick, but I stuck it down in between those 4 studs in the center, and then I've stuck a stick into the top of it. Now, if I were building upside down, it's actually easier to stick that piece in the center here. I would just have to change it around so the piece is upside down. And it sticks right into that hole in the very middle there. So, like I say, to me, I like to build up a handle in the very center of my spinner. That is something I can easily hold on to and twist to get the spinner going. So that's the start of decorating the top of the spinner. And then, like I said, the more you build out at the edges and add weight to your spinner, the better balance it will have, the longer it will spin, and if you're using it as a battle top, the more it can knock other spinners over. So there's no rules for what you stick on the edges of your spinner, except that each edge must have the same thing stuck to it. These could be arms that stick out to hit the other spinners, like this. Now, if you have ever played with Ninjago spinners, you know that in Lego Ninjago, the ninjas do spinjitzu, and you actually put the minifigure into the middle of the spinner so that they can battle other minifigures. And you can try to do that with your own homemade spinners, but it is very challenging because minifigures are not equally balanced the whole way around. When they are sitting on 4 studs, their back and their head is on one side and the other side is just their legs, so they're still not evenly balanced. So if I put a minifigure in the center of a small light spinner and I try to spin it, it will spin, but it will stop very quickly. Now what I found is that if you build a bigger spinner and you make the edges of your spinner heavier, then it will spin better. So if you want to make ninja battle tops for your Lego Ninjas, you definitely want to build your spinner big and wide and then build up the edges before you put your ninja in the middle. Hi, I hope you had fun designing your own Lego spinner. Like I said, there are many, many different ways to make spinners. So right at the end, I wanted to show you two more things that I have done with my spinners that I enjoy. This is a big flat spinner. I think it's an 8x8 square. And then on top, I have stuck on all sorts of different colors. And as long as I use the same pieces on each side, the balance remains the same, but I can make a pattern. So when it spins, it looks very colorful. And then over here, this is a different approach to putting minifigures on the spinner. Instead of putting one in the middle, I have put 4 minifigures out on the edges of my spinner, and they balance each other. It still is more wobbly than a traditional spinner, but it works pretty well. I hope you have had as much fun with your spinners as I have with mine. See you next week.